Every decision they make can have an effect on our lives.
Well, I'm not a crook.
We had to push and shove our way through a crowd of several hundred Vietnamese.
My fellow Americans, I've said on several occasions that I wouldn't comment about the recent congressional hearings on the Iran-Contra matter.
Skies over Baghdad have been illuminated.
I did not have sexual relations with that woman.
Immediately, there's speculation or cause for concern. This is the World Trade Center that was the center of a terrorist bombing.
What difference at this point does it make?
Protesters have now broken into the U.S. Capitol.
This is Our Lives in Politics on the America Out Loud Network with your host Booker Scott and Lou Basada.
Classified documents seem to be dominating the news lately. Whether it's Biden, Trump, Pence, or whoever else may have a closet full of America's secrets laying around, or in a Corvette. But other than that, it's been fairly quiet with big breaking news. And I take that as a good thing. So I thought on this program it may be a good idea to go back and shine the spotlight on recent events for some January 6th defendants. However you view the events of January 6th, 2020, you should know there have been a lot of Americans kept in prison with no bail, no justice. Others have been released to home confinement. Many of these cases are finally getting to the D.C. federal courts, and one of those recently was Richard Bigo Barnett. Richard was famously photographed with his foot on Nancy Pelosi's desk on January 6th. It's become iconic. I've gotten to know Richard a little over the last couple of years, and today we're all going to get to know his attorney, Joseph McBride, from the McBride Law Firm. This hour is brought to you by 4patriots.com. That's the number 4patriots.com. Make sure you use the promo code OUTLOUD, one word, OUTLOUD, at 4patriots.com. I'm Booker Scott, the host of Our Lives in Politics, and thanks so much for taking time out of your busy life to listen to the America Out Loud Network. My co-host and producer is Lou Basada. That's Basada with a B, by the way. And Lou, it feels like there hasn't been a lot of breaking news lately other than the classified document stuff. And now Hunter Biden is saying his laptop from hell is actually his. So do you sense that, or am I missing something?
You're definitely not missing anything. Pretty much what's dominating the news cycle down here in the Midwest flyover country is the Tyree Nichols, the thing going on down there in Memphis, Tennessee. And then you got the Adam Schiff and the Swalwell stuff going on, being taken off committees and not being very happy about it. But that's pretty much what we're hearing.
Yeah. And what I am hearing is that the Department of Justice will hopefully, according to them, this is not my words, they're going to try to arrest another 1,000 people for January 6th, and they've already arrested 1,000. So do we have equal justice under the law? Has the DOJ been weaponized against political opposition? Let's get into that now and welcome Joe McBride to Our Lives in Politics. Joe, welcome to the program.
It's good to be here, guys. Thank you very much for having me.
Hey, we're glad you made the time for us. And let's really start off, because when I think back to January 6th, 2020, and soon thereafter, it seems like most attorneys were running as fast as they could from any of those defendants. I'd never seen attorneys run so fast unless they were chasing an ambulance, but they would not represent these guys. So my first question to you is, why you? What's your motivation?
Well, my motivation is that I became an attorney for very personal reasons. To make a long story very short, I have two brothers. One of my brothers is adopted. He was born with multiple different types of deficiencies. He's diagnosed a paranoid schizophrenic. 2005, he was accused of a crime he did not commit, and he was forced into taking a plea to 15 years in jail outside of the presence of meaningful counsel, outside of the presence of doctors and my family, so on and so forth. I essentially became a lawyer in response to my brother's wrongful conviction in an effort to try to get him out. And then I committed my life toward defending people who have been wrongfully prosecuted and or over prosecuted by the government. So naturally, when January 6th came and people were running away, I ran toward the danger, because it's my vocation. It's my calling to step up on behalf of your average citizen and to make sure that somebody is meaningfully representing them and meaningfully engaging them with the United States government. It's always a David versus Goliath battle, But God loves his Davids, and God doesn't like Goliath. And, I humbly stand in the gap on behalf of my fellow American citizens against this gigantic Leviathan that we have in office. And I do my best to make sure at the end of the day that the Constitution abides and that hopefully we can keep these people out. But right now, it's not looking great, but we're going to fight and we're going to pray and we're going to maintain a positive mindset nonetheless.
How many defendants for January 6th do you and your firm represent?
I directly represent 6 who are my own. We have another about 6 or 7 clients that we're consulting on and or in the background on. Those are people who have been accused of January 6th related crimes. I have also represented and continue to represent multiple people who are being dragged before various committees. I've dealt with the January 6th committee on behalf of people in government and in the private sector. And we have a handful of civil rights lawsuits against the DOJ, U.S. Marshals, and various prisons for the mistreatment of prisoners. So, we're over 20 cases. That's for sure. Some of them criminal, some of them are civil.
Let's talk about January 6th committee for a minute and your experiences there, because so many people think that it's just one-sided. There were 2 Republicans on that committee. So in your opinion, when you represented your clients or you went before that committee, how was your treatment? And is it fair to say that it was all just a farce?
It was a farce in terms of their search for truth. What wasn't a farce about it is that they dragged American citizens through the mud because of their political affiliation. They slandered them in public, defamed them, had people debanked, canceled online, fired from their jobs. And they also created this wealth of one-sided, air quotes, evidence against people who are, Trump supporters, right of center, anybody who had the ability or the goal to speak out against the election and or the current stuff that's happening with the Biden regime. That committee was an illegitimate committee. It wasn't formed the right way, number one. And number two, it did not fulfill its mission purpose, which is supposed to be the quest for truth regarding January 6th. And number three, there was a bunch of information, very important and pertinent information, such as policing failures, people who were on the ground that day, that the committee suppressed in order to make sure that it did not give any life to the other side of the January 6th narrative.
And we wonder, how in the world does that happen in the United States of America? And I know you've given it thought. How does that happen, where evidence is suppressed, bank accounts are frozen before they get to a court? Why did that happen in this case?
Well, this is something that's been happening since, the world changed after 9/11. After 9/11, if any one of us, starting with myself, I use myself as an example. If I got on a plane headed from one place to another and I seen a guy dressed in Muslim garb, I'm probably going, oh man, is my plane going down? That guy was probably a good guy, probably prays 5 times a day, has children, doesn't drink, doesn't drug. He's probably a good person. But because at that point in time, I was listening to what the government was saying about these people, and I was listening to what the media was saying about these people, I bought into the narrative hook, line, and sinker. Now, fast forward 20 years, and the new terrorist is your white Christian Trump supporter. And what they are doing, it's the public-private partnership. We have Facebook, Twitter, who are censoring free speech. You have banks who are debanking people based on social credit scores. And then you have the government itself weaponizing the political process and the judicial system to go after political dissidents. What we have is the vertical integration of the public and private sector to go after your America First sort of person. And that is because your America First candidates, your America First Christians, your America First Jews, your America First Republicans are in the way to their globalist agenda. In order for them to dispense with the freedoms of the United States, they have to get rid of these people first. And that is exactly what's going on. That is not hyperbole. That is not exaggeration. That is not conspiracy. It is playing out before our very eyes. And anybody who refuses to hear it or see it simply doesn't have eyes to see or ears to hear what is going on in the world today.
Yeah, thank you for that. We recently had a program with Michael Johns, and he went through the entire World Economic Forum and the globalists, the ESG, and it's exactly what you're saying. And people need to wake up in America before it's too late and we lose our America. Let's get to Richard Bigo Barnett real quick. His trial recently ended in a guilty from a jury. Your experience through that trial with the judge and the jury, and really all of your experiences as you're representing these people in Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. is made up of 95% Democrats, and you also have politically appointed judges. Are these defendants getting a fair shake at all?
Hell no. They're not getting a fair shake. Nowhere even close to a fair shake. If a fair shake is the sun, DC juries in the jury pool is Pluto. It's just not happening. As you correctly stated, it's 95, 96% Biden voters on a good day. You combine that with the fact that Joe Biden is up there calling MAGA Republicans a threat to American democracy, the January 6th findings and all the media coverage, that in and of itself makes a fair, biased, untainted jury an impossibility in Washington, D.C. These cases that have gone to jury trials, their 100% rate is a conviction rate. That is something fundamentally wrong, something's fundamentally unjust with the entire process. Regarding pretrial motions in these cases are very important. This is something that the public often doesn't pay much attention to, but your pretrial motions will decide a lot about how the trial is going to go. We've been royally screwed universally across all of our cases in our pretrial motion practice, and we've had to enter into trial not only with the juries against us, but with we're being handicapped in many respects because of these pretrial motion rulings. We put on a fantastic case. We really, really did well. I was impressed with my team and the work we did. It was a trial of 2 weeks, and the jury deliberated for less than 2 hours, just under 2 hours. Mm-hmm. That wasn't even enough time to have their bagels and have one round of voting. They just simply looked at each other and said, this guy's guilty. They never gave him his day in court. They never assessed the evidence. We had body cam footage that we wanted the jury to look at. That was over 2 hours long. They didn't even look at one body cam footage in completion. It just tells you that their minds were made up well before the trial even started. He was the guy with his feet up on Nancy Pelosi's desk. They were going to get their pound of flesh. And it's very unfortunate. We are happy to say that we did preserve many issues purposefully for appeal. So we're going to appeal this case. It isn't over. We have issues that are right for the Supreme Court. So we're going to appeal until there's no more appeals left in us. But at the end of the day, we should have beat these felony charges. He very likely could have went down on the misdemeanor charges. But the fact that he's facing over 20 years in jail for putting his feet up on the desk, he's a non-violent protester who trespassed. I mean, come on, it's absolutely ridiculous.
And from what I understand, Richard has never even had a speeding ticket. It's not like he has been a criminal in his past.
62 years old, no criminal history of any kind. He is a model American citizen. He is a back the blue guy. He's documented. Just Google him and Richard Barnett raising money for the cops for body cams, and you'll see that this was a guy that raised money for local police to have body cams, for local firehouses to have the equipment that they needed. This is your shirt off your back, all American citizen who loves God, who loves his country, and who, quite frankly, hates Joe Biden. And because he had the audacity to travel from Gravette, Arkansas to Washington, D.C., and take a walk in the people's house and take his construction boots and put them up on the desk, the D.C. Ivy League elitists were horrified. They were horrified to the extent that this would be analogous to, some place where Jim Crow or segregation was really prevalent in the 1940s, and a black man was accused of kissing a white woman. That guy would not have a snowball's chance in hell in front of a racist jury, and it is just as politically charged with hatred for these guys who are going in front of these juries and judges. And make no mistake about it, Richard Barnett's picture is the poster child for the January 6th events of that day, and because of that, he unfortunately went down in a ball of fire, and it's not right. There's nothing right about it at all.
I got a question for you, Joe. I've always wondered this. Is there anyone in Washington, D.C., besides Marjorie Taylor Greene, stepping up to push back or fight for these defendants in any way or form that's really just making a statement at all? Because we don't hear anything like that. I'm in Missouri, so I'm in flyover country, but we're not hearing anything like this. And I'm just very curious, do we have any support from the GOP or anybody?
So that is a great question. I have been in Congress for the past 2 years, working with members of Congress to get things done. I work with a gentleman by the name of Alex Brusewitz as well. He's a friend and client of mine. He is a consultant for many people who were in Congress. And through Alex and through some relationships that I've been able to come up with on my own, we've been able to speak to multiple members from the GOP, and there is a plan going forward. So their ability to do anything meaningful had been handicapped due to the political composition of Congress for the past few years. But with the new session in the 118th Congress that's in there now, I want you to pay attention to the House Oversight Committee and the Judiciary Committee, and also the subcommittee for the investigation into the, I forget what it's called, but it's the weaponization of the Justice Department or something like that. You have good people who are on these committees. So Marjorie, one of the people, Matt Gaetz, another person, but pay attention to Congressman Clay Higgins. This is somebody who loves this country very much, who's been doing good work and who's going to continue to do good work. Pay attention to Corey Mills, a freshman congressman from Florida. Anna Paulina Luna, freshman congresswoman from Florida. There's a lot of new blood that is in there. This new blood, in conjunction with some of the veterans who have been there for a while, through these committees, are going to make waves. I have all the confidence in them. And to be honest, there was a lot of back and forth about Speaker McCarthy. Was he the right guy for the job? I'm one of the people who believed in him early on, not because of his prior track record, but because of what I was hearing that was coming out of these meetings. And he is giving all the appearances like he's going to be delivering on his promises. So you look at, also you have Andy Biggs, Paul Gosar, all the men, Byron Donaldson, all those people from the Freedom Caucus. And I think that the future is a lot more bright than it's been. And when you look at what the Oversight Committee and the Judiciary Committee are going to do, I know full well that they're going to make an impact in many things, especially looking into the FBI, the corruption at the DOJ, and getting to the truth of what happened with January 6th.
That's awesome, because we don't get to hear that, and I think that's very important for people to hear so that they have hope. And as always, I know Booker and I can speak for him, that we pray for Richard and all the defendants and everybody, but it's very nice to know that they've got support up there, but we just don't get to hear about that support. And thank you for sharing that.
Of course. See, if there's one other thing just on that point, anybody who's listening, I encourage you and to tell as many people as you can to find out who your congressman or congresswoman is, and if you can get 10 to 20 people from any given district to call into your congressperson's office and write emails over the course of a week, that number, it's about 15. Once you hit that plus 15 mark, your congressperson will take notice. It's like a trigger number for them. So if you can get people to call in and say, hey, these issues are important to us, we demand answers, these are election issues, and we want accountability from you, your congressperson is going to listen. And if you do that, if people do that, it's going to make a difference. I promise you.
Good deal.
Let's unwrap for a minute the narrative. We come out of January 6, 2020, and the narrative starts in the media. As you mentioned, social media is suppressed, as we're finding out now through the Twitter files, in a coordination with our government and the Democrats. So this narrative is created that it's sedition and it's an insurrection. Do you feel that that information, obviously it probably creates a bias to the jury, but is it also reaching the judges?
So I have to be careful about talking about the judges. I think the answer is yes. I think that the judges have a certain level of contempt and disgust for January 6 related cases. I feel that's an objective truth that won't get me into trouble. Anybody in D.C. is going to share that predisposition. Now, calling people insurrectionists, using the term sedition. I mean, look, the sedition charges should have never, ever happened. It's absolute ridiculousness. And the word insurrectionist is analogous to the N-word for Black people. And people say, oh, Joe, you can't say that. Well, no, I am saying that because that's exactly what it is. Now, what do I mean? Does it have a different historical context? Of course. But what was the purpose of the N-word? The purpose of the N-word was to dehumanize an entire group of people. It was to say that these people have something about them. There's a specific identifiable characteristic that allows us to group all these people into one class of people, and then to call them this N-word. And the N-word, what it does is it makes them less than human. It subhumanizes them. And when you subhumanize somebody, only humans are entitled to constitutional protection. So once somebody drops below the level of humanity, they now become this sub-constitutional class of people. And that's what the term insurrectionist is designed to do. It's designed to say, this person is not an American citizen. They're a traitor. They're a terrorist. And because of that, they're not entitled to the protections of the Constitution like everybody else. And as soon as people buy into that, whether it's passively or whether it's actively in their mind, they are participating in the dehumanization and the declassification of a constitutionally protected class of people. They're dropping people down to the subhuman level, subconstitutional class level. And once that happens, anything goes. Solitary confinement goes. Torture goes. Long, disproportionate sentences go. These people no longer are American citizens. They're no longer our brothers and sisters in humanity. They are enemies of the state, as Joe Biden calls them. They are a constitutional class of people. And because of that, their votes doesn't count and the Constitution does not apply to them. That is the specific intended purpose of what they're doing. And they're doing it quite successfully. It's shocking how many people are allowing this to happen.
I would like to ask you something as well, Joe, about that, kind of segued into that. I guess that's how it's possible that these defendants were left in these deplorable conditions in the D.C. jails and everything by what you just described. So if anyone says, how is this even possible in the United States of America as a U.S. citizen? I think you just defined it and explained it perfectly. I think that tells us all what we need to know, that that's how they look at these American citizens and that's how they're being treated. And I would go as far as to say, my own personal humble opinion, I bet you that we have hardened criminals and we have true terrorists against this country who were treated better than these people are being treated. That's my personal opinion.
It's an accurate opinion. As a matter of fact, I filed it as an exhibit in one of my cases. In Ryan Nichols' case, I filed it in his original bail motion that got denied, and then I was able to get him out a year later on the same facts, which is crazy. But after I got him out, I attached this letter from the guys in the D.C. gulag, and they published a letter to the public saying that we would rather you send us to Guantanamo Bay because we know that the people in Guantanamo Bay actually get treated better than the people do in the D.C. and Virginia gulag system, and that really says a lot. And there are two people out there who have been in the system almost the entire time. Jake Lang, who is not my client, he's represented by Stephen Metcalf. Jake Lang has been moved 12 times during the time of pretrial confinement. Christopher Quagler is my client. I represent him. He has celiac disease. They have been knowingly giving him non-celiac safe food for 2 years. He has had a massive amount of damage to his nerves, his intestines. He's down about 60 pounds right now. And each time we say to the judge, wait, we need to get him out, they move him again. And he was just moved again last night. We don't even know where he's going. And you say to yourself, how can this happen? How can they move people around as if they are retail goods? And you have to ask yourself, has this ever happened before? And the only time that this has ever happened in the history of our country is when slaves were treated like chattels. They just simply moved people around, threw them on a bus, threw them on a boat, threw them on a horse, whatever it was, and dragged them from one place to another to be sold. Now, we're not selling slaves here, but what they are doing is wrongfully moving people across state lines so as to thwart the judicial process. And by doing so, they are enabling the captors to torture these people for extended periods of time in complete violation of their constitutional protections, namely due process. That is happening right now. And people either just don't want to believe, or they're turning the other cheek. Not turning the other cheek, they're turning a blind eye. People aren't involved enough. And if you're listening to this, you got to get involved. You got to call your congressman. You got to get online. You got to tweet about this. You got to talk about this. You got to raise hell about this, because these are American citizens with no criminal records that this stuff is happening to, and they're being targeted because of their political beliefs. It could be your father, your mother, your sister, your grandfather, your boyfriend, your cousin, your partner next. And you don't want it to have to get to that level in order for you to get involved. So people, please pray and please get involved before it's too late.
Absolutely.
We're going to take a break here for just a minute. And on the other side of it, we're going to get into unequal justice under the law, some Biden appointees. We have an interesting clip from Senator John Kennedy we want to play and get Joe's take on that. And, there's a winter storm happening and lights are going out all over the place. And Lou, I know you just had one recently. January marked the third time a power station in North Carolina was damaged by gunfire. And authorities are saying the attack raises a new level of threat. And these same authorities are now checking our grid for vulnerabilities. They've identified 9 key substations. If these substations are attacked, power could be knocked out from coast to coast for up to 18 months. A blackout lasting not days, but weeks or months. Your life would be frozen in time right at that moment. Lights all over the country would go out, throwing people into total darkness. That's why having your own portable solar power right now is more important than ever before. With the Patriot Power Sidekick from 4 Patriots, you get a solar generator that doesn't install into your house. It's quick, easy, portable. It's on the go or even inside your house. It's small. It's about the size of a lunchbox, but it packs a lot of power, powerful enough for your phones, medical devices, and even a mini fridge. It comes with a free solar panel and, right now, free shipping. Most important, it comes with an unheard of 365-day satisfaction guarantee. Not only that, but right now, 10% off can be yours on your first purchase by typing the code OUTLOUD at checkout. Just go to 4patriots.com. Use code OUTLOUD to get 10% off your first purchase of the Patriot Power Sidekick, or for that matter, anything that's available in the store. That's 4patriots.com. Use the code OUTLOUD. We'll be back with more of Our Lives in Politics in just a minute on the America Out Loud Network.
You never think about your belt as being disgusting and filled with germs and bacteria. But what's the first thing you touch after using the restroom before you've washed your hands and you've never cleaned it? Your belt. Whether your belt is nylon or leather, both materials absorb moisture and either can't be washed or washing destroys them. You need the Super Belt. The Super Belt is not leather. It's an amazing webbing coated in a special polymer which makes it completely waterproof and antimicrobial. You can wash it, even clean it with bleach. This belt is nearly indestructible and made in America. Go to thesuperbelt.com to learn more about this incredible belt, which will last you the rest of your life. Thesuperbelt.com.
Welcome back to Our Lives in Politics on the America Out Loud Radio Network. I'm your host, Booker Scott, alongside Lou Pizzata, and our special guest is January 6 attorney, not just January 6, I shouldn't pigeonhole him that way, but Joseph McBride is a great American patriot that has taken on that task, and we welcome him back now to Our Lives in Politics. Through your experiences now, Joe, over the last 2 years, is it fair to say that we don't have equal justice under the law?
Oh, it is completely fair to say. The United States government has a long and storied history of targeting a specific group of people for the acquisition of power. And I mean, you know, there's always a scapegoat. We've seen it with Japanese Americans in internment camps and during World War II. We've seen it with African Americans over the course of our nation's history. It's a very unfortunate experience. And now the new group of people who are being targeted are, you know, white, largely Christian Republicans. And the government needs a scapegoat. And right now and in any other time, when you are the targeted audience by the government, you're not going to get a fair shake. There is no equal treatment under the law for you.
Earlier, you mentioned the word insurrectionists and insurrection. When I look back and think back to January 6, 2020, insurrection became a word that the Democrats threw around within hours of that day happening, almost in a coordinated effort. In your opinion, was there a coordinated effort between Democrats and the federal government on January 6, 2020?
Unequivocally, 100% yes. There's no question in my mind about it. And that is based on gut instinct and intuition going into this, and then reviewing documents and video footage. I have behind the scenes access because I'm an attorney, and I get to see what the American public has not seen in terms of video footage. The policing failures are too coordinated. They're too look, the Democrats are not going to come straight at you. The way that these people work, it's passive aggressive, right? And they simply set up the perfect conditions for the peaceful protest to turn into something else that it wasn't. There was a 100% coordination, but there was also intentional policing failures. They fed the Capitol Police and the Metropolitan Police Department to the crowd. And the peaceful crowd was transitioned from peaceful to being violent at times because there were agitators that were hired and sent there to stir up the pot between, to stir conflict between the peaceful protesters and the police there that day. There is no question about it. And if you want to look at some of the actual policing recklessness and negligence that resulted in, for instance, let's say the Western Terrace police line collapsing due to police negligence, look at some of the video exhibits that I entered in Richard Barnett's case. They're now public information. Joe Hanneman from the Epoch Times has covered it at length. Julie Kelly from American Greatness has covered it at length. And those videos are available on Rumble now as well. And you'll see in particular with regard to Daniel Tao, his body cam footage shows him at about 2:25 p.m. He is talking to a Metropolitan Police officer. And this is one of many times, but in particular this time, he tells this guy, put it up in the effing scaffolding. And what he's telling him to do is to take a 40 millimeter gas canister and to shoot it up into the scaffolding where people are peacefully protesting. The officer tries to shoot it up there, but it doesn't work. It falls down. This is complete recklessness. It falls down right in front of them, and he gasses everybody around him. So you see all of these police officers choking and running, and they start to throw up, and they just run up the stairs. And so what happens as a result? The perfect police line that was protecting the Western Terrace collapses. The whole thing collapses because all the police officers abandon it, and all the protesters begin to move toward the Capitol. That is due to police negligence, recklessness on behalf of the Metropolitan Police Department. Yet January 6th defendants are being prosecuted for that exact crime. A big to-do has been made about Officer Brian Sicknick, who passed away, unfortunately, after January 6th because of arguably because of injuries that he may have sustained at the Western Terrace. Sicknick is widely considered to have been gassed by protesters and then gotten sick and possibly stroked out. We know, number one, he wasn't given the adequate medical attention from his fellow police officers. We know, number two, we think that's because he was an avid Trump supporter. Be that as it may, that blame for that gassing was been put on specific defendants, when in fact it was the Metropolitan Police Department themselves, who we have on video now and released to the public, who gassed that entire side. And they didn't do it once. They didn't do it twice. They did it like 10 times that day. They should have never been using gas. You see, on multiple occasions, they shoot gas and then they go win, 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 win. And the gas and the wind blows back in their face and it winds up gassing everybody behind them. Like, if the wind is blowing, you don't use gas. And it was just absolute out and out recklessness on behalf of the Metropolitan Police Department, which resulted in the collapse of the Western Terrace, which turned into a pitched battle because people were mad that they were being gassed for simply reciting the Pledge of Allegiance or singing God Bless America.
A gentleman by the name of Ray Epps from Arizona was there on January 6th. He was actually there January 5th as well. He was telling everybody to go to the Capitol tomorrow on January 5th. And then he shows up on the Capitol grounds January 6th, and there is video of him removing bicycle racks so that people could go to the Capitol. This man has never been prosecuted. What is your feeling on Ray Epps? So many people believe that he is obviously paid by the federal government. He was not really questioned by the FBI, but he was brought in to the January 6th committee.
Look, Ray Epps is the poster child for, and there are about 50 other people, maybe 100 other people who did Ray Epps type things who have not been persecuted or prosecuted by the government. Ray Epps is on camera the day before planning. This is pre-planning. This is conspiracy 101. Go into the Capitol tomorrow. Go into the building. Oh, well, no, you're a Fed. You're a Fed. We're just here to protest. No, we got to go into the building. And then on January 6th, he's seen marching down. He's gathering people from the ellipse. He's streamlining them down to the Capitol. And then when he's down at the Capitol, he's participating and calling the shots at multiple breach locations. Any one of my clients, were they to have done something this sophisticated, something this well thought out, something this coordinated, they would have gone down on seditious conspiracy. There is no question about it. The fact that this guy has not even been indicted tells you all that you need to know. I mean, this is the equivalence of Lee Harvey Oswald being on camera for what he did at the Kennedy assassination and then still walking around in the public. We know that Lee Harvey Oswald didn't work by himself. CIA and other people were involved in that day. CIA and other people were involved on January 6th as well. The truth may not come out this year. It may not come out next year, but at some point, the truth was going to come out. People could not believe, even up until a few months ago, that the CIA would participate in the assassination of the sitting president. We know that unequivocally now. They did that. They participated in that egregious act. Do you think that they have gotten any better since 1963? I don't think so. So the truth will eventually come out. The truth will have its day. It's just a matter of what level of suffering the American public is going to have to endure, and how much more hypocrisy are we going to have to endure until the truth has its, until the truth comes to light.
So let's talk about federal judges for a moment. There's a lot being said about federal judges, and recently Senator John Kennedy, he was at a hearing questioning 5 different appointees that are going through the confirmation process right now that Joe Biden has nominated. And we're going to play this right now. I don't know if you've heard it. This was at the last week of January when this hearing took place. I know you're a busy guy, so you may or may not have heard this, but I want to play it for our listeners right now and for you and get your thoughts on this, because to me, this is very scary. Here's Senator John Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and congratulations to all of you. Judge on the far end, tell me what Article 5 of the Constitution does?
Article 5 is not coming to mind at the moment.
Okay. How about Article 2?
Neither is Article 2.
Okay. Do you know what purposivism is?
In my 12 years as an assistant attorney general and my 9 years serving as a judge, I was not faced with that precise question. We are the highest trial court in Washington state, so I'm frequently faced with issues that I'm not familiar with, and I thoroughly review the law, research, and apply the law to the facts presented to me.
Well, you're going to be faced with it if you're confirmed. I can assure you of that.
So, Joe, there you have an answer from someone that is trying to become a federal judge. Is that acceptable?
No, it's not acceptable. I mean, look, these people are being put in there because of their politics, because of their political biases. They're being put in there for what I call or for religious purposes. And what I mean by that is their anti-Christic secularism, their atheism their secular humanism has become this cult. And if you are a member of the cult of secular humanists, whatever you want to call it, they want to put you in these positions of power so you can indoctrinate and enforce doctrine going forward. It's not about their skill set. The idea that somebody doesn't, is looking at being confirmed as a federal judge and can't answer a question about basic statutory interpretation, the interpretation of law and statutes, that somebody doesn't know that Article 2 is related to the presidency. It can be used to impeach. That Article 5, it has to do with amendments and other things like that. Look, we're talking about the Constitution. And if you are a federal judge, you need to know the Constitution front and back, up and down, left and right. And what happened here was a great and wonderful example by Senator Kennedy to show the American public that these judges don't care about the Constitution and they don't know the Constitution. The doctrine and the things that are important to them has to do with being woke, has to do with social credit scores, and has to do with making sure that they have the right pronouns and that your gender, your identity, and everything else like that is more important than the principles that are enshrined in our articles, the principles that are enshrined in our amendments, the principles that are enshrined in particular in our Bill of Rights. The idea that a sitting judge who's potentially going to be confirmed, treats this like it's some kind of gotcha question, when it's really not, is absolutely preposterous. But it's a wonderful indictment of the level of ignorance that is prevalent in the judiciary today.
If you go through law school, aren't you taught the Constitution? And if she is a U.S. attorney, wouldn't she have an idea of both of those articles? And real quick, just for people listening that may not know, I'm not an attorney. I don't know. So I look it up. Article 5 is how to amend the Constitution. We've only had 27 amendments in 250 years, so it's not an easy process. Article 2 establishes the executive branch. It gives the power to enforce federal laws, which is exactly what she's going to be doing. And she doesn't know what Article 2 is.
Yeah, this is the basics. And it would be like, somebody getting up there and saying, hey, I'm going to deliver a sermon today, connecting the book of Exodus to the book of Revelation. And you're going, okay, but I just want to make sure that you have the qualifications. So, tell me what you know about the 10 Commandments. And, in your opinion, has Jesus risen from the dead? And if you can't give the answers to these questions, you got no right in hell to be given a speech in my church, right? Or a sermon. And that is exactly what she's doing here. Like she's just not qualified, but they're going to put her through anyway because they don't care about qualifications. They care about what pronoun she uses.
Yeah, this administration, there's many examples of this going on.
Yes.
And in the justice system as well. So
I agree.
When you look at the World Economic Forum, you look at Marxism, and it's something that we've kind of talked about here in this hour. Insurrectionists, those words, racism, all of those things are used to divide us as people instead of unite us. And it's very important for the World Economic Forum and the globalists to have that happen, isn't it, Joe?
Of course. A house divided cannot stand. There is a globalist agenda that has absolute hatred and contempt for all things American, all things that are true blue American: freedom, individualism, capitalism, the right to freely worship, the right to freely assemble, the right to criticize government, the right to say, hey, you have this view in the world and I disagree. I think that your view sucks and that you're a madman, but I'm going to respect you nonetheless. So just give me the reciprocal respect. They hate that. They want to take that from us in order to indoctrinate us into this one world way of thinking. But America is never going to allow that to happen so long as we continue to abide by our Constitution and by our founding principles. What they are doing is they're trying to discredit the Constitution in the same way that an atheist will discredit the Bible. The Bible was written 2,000 years ago, so it really has no meaning. And then you go, well, the Bible is alive and well, and it has all the meaning in the world. It depends on how you look at it. So if that's the way that you feel, then fine, but you're not going to force me into your system of belief and make me give up on my God because you think that the Bible is something other than I believe it to be. And they want us to do the same thing with the Constitution. Oh, it was written by a bunch of white men who owned slaves, and because of that, it's not relevant. Let's get rid of that and come up with this, Chinese Marxist way of thinking based on a social credit score, because really that's what's best for us. Get the heck out of here. So people got to wake up.
Isn't it amazing, Joe, that I consider the Bible, of course, first and foremost, but also like the Constitution. I look at them both as living documents. They still apply today, and they always will. And that's what most people don't realize. They think, like you just stated, that it happened so many hundreds of years ago, or even the Bible thousands of years ago, whatever it is. And they say, well, it doesn't apply today. We must make change. Just like these people over in Davos. Nobody elected these people. I don't want any of these people telling me what to do. I never elected them. I don't like them, and I don't support them. But yet they want to tell us what to do, and they want to rule us. And I'm totally against that. But again, I think everything is both of these documents, the Constitution and the Bible, the book itself, these are living things that still apply to us today, and they work, period.
I agree with you 100%. Both the Constitution and the Word of God are both inspired documents, inspired words for sure. Look, God knows what he's doing. He's got a way with numbers, right? He often uses the number 3. He often uses the number 7, and he often uses the number 40. But when it comes to the law, he likes the number 10. I give you the 10 commandments. Get your act together, Israel, so I can bless you and you can go out there and you can be who I have appointed you to be. And what did God give the United States? He gave us the Bill of Rights, 10 commandments for our Constitution as well, because he's behind it and he knows what he's doing. And for us to forsake that is to forsake God himself. And I'm just like you, never going to participate in that ignorance. No way, no how.
Well said.
One thing I try to point out all the time when I'm given the opportunity is that the Constitution was written from oppression. The men that wrote it, regardless of their race, regardless of their age, it was written because a tyrannical government was controlling them. So it was written from oppression. And because of that, it can apply to anyone that is being oppressed. And the amendments have been made through the years to make corrections to that. And it continues to be amended when needed. Joe, we started this by asking you about your motivation. And you mentioned your brother being incarcerated for 15 years for a crime that he didn't commit. Let me ask you, did he have to spend the entire 15 years, or were you ever able to become a lawyer and help him before that happened?
He spent almost 11 years in. By the time I had graduated. I had to go to college, right? I hadn't even gone to college. I had to go to college and did law school, take the bar exam. That took me about 10 years. So by the time, that process was over, my brother was like getting out like the same week. So I was never able to help him in any meaningful way. Only, I was there as part of his support system, but I was never able to help him because the clock had ran out on his case. But, I feel in my heart that sort of sense of missed opportunity or unfinished business, God has given me a fire in my heart to help other people and to do so with a little bit of a pep in my step, knowing that time is of the essence, that things need to get done the right way the first time around, so on and so forth. So unfortunately, my family had to go through the whole experience. It was unpleasant. But we are stronger because of it. And look, if my brother never gets locked up, I'm never speaking to you today. I'm probably going to be still teaching jujitsu in some mixed martial arts school somewhere and doing that. But, I stand before you now because like the cross is a mystery, right? The cross, we look at it and it's objectively the most horrible thing that we could ever think of. It's the all perfect creator of the universe, sinless, beautiful, spotless lamb being crucified and tortured by his own children. But out of that horrific situation, the greatest good that humanity has ever known took place. And, this is a lesser cross, but it was a cross for my family. And out of that horrible set of circumstances, something noble and something great was able to happen. And that's how I arrived here today.
Amen.
It's amazing how God uses people for certain things. And when doors open, when doors close, other doors open. And obviously you've opened that door. Let me ask you, what do you hope for this nation and this country? Understanding where we are at this very moment, what are your hopes?
My hope is that God will forgive us. My hope is that enough people will repent and say, hey, listen, God, we're sorry. We got it wrong. We're always going to get it wrong. We need your help. Can you please help us? The contrition doesn't have to be perfect. We just need to say as a people and as a nation, we need your intercession. We need your help. We cannot do it right without you. Left to our own devices, it's going to be genocide. It's going to be murder. It's going to be war because we're messed up. And I hope that God will have mercy on us. God, when I look at the rise and fall of Israel and the separation of the two kingdoms, and I see the parallels between Israel and the United States of America, and there are times where Israel was sent off into captivity, and there was times where God turned around and said, you know what, I'm going to give you another shot, and the punishment won't be this severe. When I think about Abraham and Lot going to Sodom and Gomorrah, trying to find 10 good men. They weren't able to do it, and God nuked the place, right? There's a lot more than 10 good men and women here in the United States of America. There are millions of us who love God. There are millions of us who are making amends for our sins and for the sins of our nation. And we're saying, hey, have mercy on us. And I hope that God will have mercy on us. I hope that there will be a return to our constitutional principles, a return to the nuclear family, a return to the appreciation of life from conception until the very last day. And that we will put away this culture of death, because if we don't, it's going to consume us. So my hope is that America finds its way, and that God gives us the assist that we very much need in this hour.
That's awesome. And I know we really, we pray for you. And I want to, before we run out of time today, I want to personally thank you for everything that you're doing for these people, these defendants. And I just think it's amazing that someone like you can talk the way you are, because we don't get to hear that very much, especially from lawyers. And it sounds horrible to say, but listening to the way you just described all of that, that is very refreshing. And I can tell you that I support you. And again, please make sure that that you tell us how we can help support these defendants through their J6 situation any way that we can. Please let us know about that. But I know I can speak for Booker and myself again. We will definitely pray for you, for them. And again, thank you so much for everything you've done. It's amazing. And I bless you, and I hope God blesses you many, many, many more times over.
I received the blessing, and I thank you for it. And I ask God to return it to you 100-fold, to you and to those whom you love. And regarding anybody who has it in their heart to pray for us, please pray for us. And if you're able to give, my social media, I am McBride Law NYC across all social media platforms. And my website is McBrideLawNYC.com. There's a January 6th tab there. Some of the clients who I represent are listed. Others that we keep kind of private are not. So if you're inclined to give to one of the particular Give, Send, Go funds that are there, please go ahead. There's otherwise a global Give, Send, Go fund that I have there that goes toward my January 6th related work, and we always apply it where it's needed most. We struggled in Richard Barnett's case in terms of raising money. So all the money that went into that global fund went into Richard's case, and we were able to provide Richard with meaningful representation and take care of everything that needed taken care of. The clients who I represent that are connected to January 6th are, lower income, middle America people with no real savings or little savings at all. There's no way that they would able to afford the type of representation that we have been bringing, me and my team and I and our partners, without your help. So thank you in advance. God bless you, and may God bless and save the United States of America. We need it now more than ever.
You've been listening to Joe McBride of the McBride Law Firm in New York City. Joe, thank you so much for coming and taking the time to do this. I really appreciate it, and I know our listeners do as well. You know, salt without flavor is useless. It's thrown on the street to be stepped on, and you are the salt of the earth, so be salty.
You've been listening to Our Lives in Politics with your host Booker Scott and Lou Basada.